Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author, tech pioneer, and storyteller Mick Lowther. He sits on a rich tapestry of literary creations. With over 6 decades in technology, he not only coded, but crafted 2 nonfiction adventures, 2 charming children's tales, and 2 recent novels. He's got a great career story and an even better one brewing up in his retirement. Enjoy this journey. Nice to meet you, man. Where are you located?
I'm in Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. It's good to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out today.
Sure.
So I want to begin our conversation. We're going on the 4-year anniversary of this pandemic. And before we get into your life as a storyteller, tech pioneer, and author, I want to know, how did you survive the pandemic back in 2020? And how did it change you?
Well, I'm retired. I still work with my brothers, but we do all our work from home. So I just sat here at my computer while the whole year went by and continued our business, and spent time writing books. So it was actually a very condensed time to turn out some words.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the caveat. I mean, if you're a writer, having something like a pandemic happen is just going to be another day in paradise. You're just going to do what you do anyway.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's pretty much gone, and I'm still here.
There you go. As we all are. I sometimes feel like, I don't know if you remember that show on HBO called Left Behind, but it was about everybody. Yeah. So sometimes I feel like I'm walking around on that sound set and we all survived the rapture.
Right. Yeah.
So, well, man, you got a great backstory, and to get a handle, I know you're retired, but maybe you can dip a little bit into your prior life. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of 3rd graders, it's career day, and one of the kids was curious about not only what you do now, but what your career was, how would you explain to that child what you did and what you do now?
Well, I spent my entire working life programming computers, which is telling computers what to do and how to do it and stuff like that. And in between time, I wrote stories. And I actually had this conversation with a bunch of 3rd graders. And I said, well, when I start out, I write the story and I go back and read it and say, God, who wrote this? And then so I pick at it and improve it. And so a little later on, I say, wow, who wrote this?
So I'm curious, take me back to when you were in the 3rd grade. What was your dream to grow up and become?
I had no idea.
Well,
I didn't figure out what I wanted to do until I graduated from college. I was just a sort of oblivious child living in a fog. High school made it even worse. But in college, I figured out I was good at something. I was good at math. I was good at writing, and so those 2 things have propelled me on for till today, which I'm 83 years old now. I'm still doing it.
So what is it specifically about? I mean, that's a real right-left brain world you got going on. I mean, when you're creating stories, obviously you're on the right side with technology, or on the left. How did this fascination with technology become your career?
Well, I was looking for a job when I got out of college. I got a job as a computer programmer. Had no idea what that meant, but the company I worked for said they had taken a chance on a math major once before, and so they tried again. Well, it turned out that programming is so mathematical in that it's proceeding in a logical sequence. It's not math itself, it's just the process behind it. And it turned out that I just loved programming computers because I was sitting there And the only person I had to deal with, or the thing, was the computer, and it had rules, and you followed the rules, or your program didn't work. So, uh, unlike life in many respects. I'm
So, are you a Mac guy or are you a Windows guy?
a Windows guy.
Windows guy, okay. All right. So, what was the first story that you ever wrote where you thought, "Man, I have a talent here. This can become something bigger."
The first story that I wrote with a desire to be published was a story called "The Friend of a Friend Sent Me," and that was about arriving in Alaska, uh, and going on you go to this address and this person will take you in. And so I knocked on the door and the person answered and said, "Who are you?" And I explained, and they said, "Well, come on in." And so I wrote a story about that, and it got published in um, a magazine in Alaska. Yeah.
So, in this life of yours that's been full of, a lot of things, who's been an inspiration or a hero for you that's made you, that's helped you become who you are?
Well, I really like the writing of certain authors. The most memorable one is Roger Zelazny, who turns out a lot of science fiction books. But I was just really impressed with his ability to tell the story, and especially rambling paragraphs about a journey. And so that I enjoyed very much. And so I kind of used that as a model, and since developed my own style. Um, so yeah, I guess that's my story there.
So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational or fascinating, who would that be? Who would you love to spend some time with? Maybe interview?
That's a tough question to answer because um, I don't know if I have anything to say to them.
Well, let me ask you this. Is somebody that obviously creates stories and has a fascination with things, if you could go back in time and see one event in human history or one period in time, where would you go? What would you love to see with your own eyes?
Let's see. I'm stumped on that.
Okay. So we'll just move into some easy stuff here. What's your motivation every day? What gets you up every day to do the work that you do to create stories, to write? What is that motivation for you?
Well, the motivation is that I try to write 1,000 words a day. Most often it turns out to be 500, but as S. Scott Fitzgerald said in his later years, I'm only writing one page a day, but it's a good page. Said that from his hospital bed.
That's great.
So, so well, I still work with my brothers in our business, so that takes up my mornings, and the afternoons I work on whatever story I am creating at the moment, and in the evenings I watch movies. Um, the story process for me is that um, I give my characters a chance to figure out what they're doing. Um, they kind of take a lot on a life of their own, and I just follow them around and watch what they do and write it down. And so I I come up, well, this is the scene I'm going to write today because I had it in a dream or thought about it sitting in my chair or whatever. So I write that scene, and the characters take over. And I just, especially in conversations, because I know my characters and they know me, and I know who's going to say something and what their attitude is. Are they sassy? Are they thoughtful? Are they this or that? And so I just write down what I hear in my head, and when I'm done with that, I say, well, I need another scene. So I think about that for a while, and I've written. Well, I'm right in the last book of a trilogy right now, and I'm about a third of the way through it, and I have no idea where it's going, but where it's been has been a lot of fun.
So let me ask you this, being somebody that's had a pulse on technology and has been involved with it for a while, where do you see us going here in about 10 years? I mean, we're on the advent of AI. There's always exponential progress in the world of technology. Do you have any beat on where we're going?
Well, I'm not not sure it's a good direction, but um, I had a feeling that AI is going to make life um, so easy that it will get in the way of people being creative. I like to think about my stories, whereas, as I understand it, uh, you can just go to AI and say, "Tell me a story about this and this, and I want these things to happen." And 12 seconds later, the story comes out. And well, that's not really creating in my worldview.
Hmm. So let me ask you this. Of all of the things that you've done and become and overcome in your life and achieved, what are you the proudest of?
Hiking the Appalachian Trail and writing a book about it and getting it published. That was the single most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Uh, Hiking the trail was just a wonderful experience. I went with my wife and 10-year-old daughter, and we weren't in any hurry. At least my wife and daughter weren't. I was, but I kind of get over that after a while. Um, I spent more time writing the book than I did hiking the trail. Um, I spent 12 years writing the book because I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know how to write a story very well. So I rewrote it 5 or 6 times until the point where I got and read it through and say, that sounds pretty good. I think I'm done. And so um, it takes less time to write a book these days. I wrote my last 2 books in about a year each, and the one I'm working on now, same thing. It'll be take me about a year to get it done. And the fact that I don't know where it's going is not a problem to me, because I know that it'll come to me. And when I get it all written, I'll look through it and say, well, I'm not sure some of this should be here. I'm not sure some of it should be in this order. And uh, that's a really fun part too. It's a lot easier to edit than create. Um, so anyway, I'm looking forward to doing the rest of this book because I'm really enjoying it.
So what's been one of your favorite fan letters you've gotten from one of your readers?
I think I ever got one. I
Okay.
got I got lots of rejection letters.
Gotcha.
The
Gotcha.
best line of a rejection letter was, the reason they were turning me down is I was sent them a children's book for publication, and the reason they were turning it down was that I didn't talk down to the readers. So I assumed them to be up to understanding a good vocabulary, and that bothered them for some reason. Well, I'm not going to write down to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand. So let me ask you this. Everyone out there has a perception of you. Family, friends, your fans, you know, everybody that you've worked with, but ultimately you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm this old guy who kind of really set in my ways. I found a place to live that I just love, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I offer no apologies for any of that.
So if anyone wants to pick up your books, they want to learn more about you, reach out. What's the best way to do that?
You can go to my website, and that'll take you to either Amazon or the publisher or to my eBay store. And the story of all my books is there in all those places.
Excellent. Mick, I'm so glad that we had the chance to connect. Thank you, sir, for taking time out to talk about your story of making stories, and I really appreciate it. Best of luck with everything.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.